All right. Um, Part review, part looking into the future. Let's talk about some of you still don't grading the tests. Many of my students do not understand the basic sine cosine curves. It's going to be impossible you for to succeed unless you understand the values on those unit circle. Cosine represents the x values as you go around certain angles. Y represents the vertical, I'm sorry, sine represents the y values. Here's a sine curve. Remember, here's a unit circle. I can't really draw one, but as I go around the unit circle counterclockwise, we go this way on the graph as we go counterclockwise around the circle, okay? All right. So remember, on the x-axis, my y value is 0, right? And as I go up 45 degrees, pi fourths, it's root 2 over 2, or the vertical is 0.71. And then as I go up to pi halves at 90 degrees, it's 1. And then I start coming down around the circle again to 135 degrees, or 3 pi fourths, it's root 2 over 2 again, or 0.71 roughly. And then we come down all the way on that circle to pi, 180 degrees, and it's the x-axis again, and y value or sine is 0. And then we get into quadrant 3 and 4 where y is negative. Okay, 5 pi fourths, okay, that's 225 degrees, 180 plus 45, okay, it's negative 0.71, negative root 2 over 2, down to 270 degrees, 3 pi halves, negative 1, comes up to 315 degrees. This is quadrant 4. This is a negative 45 degree angle or a 315 degree angle. Okay, it's negative root 2 over 2. Comes up back to being on the x-axis where y is 0. So here's my sine graph. Notice the middle of my sine graph is right on the y-axis. We go up to 1, come down to 0 at pi. At 3 pi halves, 270 degrees, it's negative 1 and back up. That's one period. It took 2 pi normally, okay? All right, that's my b is 1. 2 pi over b is the period. 2 pi over 1 is 2 pi. After this, we just start repeating ourselves. We've already gone up, down, bottomed out, back to 0, and I'm starting the period over again, okay? Here's cosine. Some of you didn't know the cosine graph. Notice cosine on the y-axis peaks out here. There's the mountaintop at 1. Remember, the x value, when we start that unit circle, on the x value, 0 degrees, cosine and x is 1. As you go up 45 degrees, it's root 2 over 2. That's the same as your sine. And then at pi halves, that's on the y-axis. X is 0. Okay? So I'm up here. I'm on the y-axis. And in quadrants 2, from here to here, 2 and 3, from pi halves all the way to 3 pi halves, this is negative cosine territory, quadrant 2 and 3. Okay? So at 3 pi fourths, or 135 degrees, it's negative root 2 over 2. That's my x value. This is cosine. And at pi, I'm negative 1. So I went from 1 all the way to negative 1. And then I come up down in quadrant 3, 5 pi fourths, 225 degrees. It's a negative 0.7, negative root 2 over 2, up to 3 pi halves, which is the bottom of the y-axis where it's cosine. Anywhere on the y-axis, cosine and x is 0. Okay, that's pi halves, 3 pi halves. Okay, and now we're in quadrant 4, and I start getting positive x. Okay. And I start coming back up all the way. Here's 7 pi fourths, which is 315 degrees, positive root 2 over 2, or 0.71, and then back up to 2 pi where we started. Here's one period, starting off at 1, 0, negative 1, 0, back to 1. There's one period, okay? My domain, I can plug in anything into this function here. My amplitude is 1. Okay, right here, the coefficient is 1. All right, it's always the absolute value. I go, and when you look at a graph that you don't know, you take your max minus your min divided by 2. 1 minus negative 1 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. But you can look right here and see it's just 1 cosine x, okay? Range is -1 to 1, period's 2 pi. All right, so we need to know this. When we graph, let's see, I went 5 minutes. Let's talk about our graphs of, and I can't write on this, folks, so you have to listen to me. Secant. Secant is 1 over cosine. So it's 1 over these values. Remember now, cosine's in the denominator, and I can't have my denominator be 0. So where will I put asymptotes? So graph your cosine graph. Anywhere at 0, I'm going to have an asymptote here at 5 pi halves, 3 pi halves, and negative pi halves, negative 3 pi halves. There's going to be asymptotes blocking that because I can't put that value in. Why? I can't have 1 over 0. Okay? Now think of this. Here's at 0. Remember, 1 over secant is 1 over cosine. Well, cosine of 0 is 1. 1 over 1 is 1. So that's my value. As these values become fractions, you remember an integer like 1, 2, 3, or 4 divided by fractions, it gets bigger. The smaller the number you're dividing by, the smaller the denominator, the bigger your number gets. Okay, so if I take 1 divided by this cosine value right here, which is notice this y value. Here's 1/2, here's 1, here's 1/2. This right here near pi halves, let's say about 80 degrees, is a very small number. So this will be 1 divided by a small number is a big number. So remember, we're going to have an asymptote right here. So this graph's going to get bigger this way. And notice, these are all positive values here all the way to this negative pi halves right here. These are all positive values, but they're all fractions. So 1 over fractions is a bigger number. So 1 over 1/2 is going to be 2. 1 over 1/2 is 2. So this is kind of going to go, you're going to have like a smile here. 1 over a very, very tiny number where you're going to find right here is going to be a very, very big number, okay? So you're going to have kind of a smile. Let me show you kind of a cheat. I'll cheat a little bit here for you. Let's see. Okay. Notice, here's your sine graph. And notice where it's going to have asymptotes. Here's my sine graph here. Okay. Where's sine 0? Okay. At 0, pi, 2 pi. Notice how we've got asymptotes there. Okay. All right, this is kind of similar. So let's go back to where we were. All right. So that's cosine. Let's go back to that sine graph and okay. All right, sine is 0 here, here, and here. Notice my y values. This is where I'll put asymptotes for what? Cosecant. 1 over sine is cosecant. So I can't have 1 over 0 and sine is 0 here, here, any interval of pi. Okay? All right? Okay, 1 over 1 is 1. 1 over this 1/2 is going to be 2. 1 over this 1/2 is 2. We're going to start getting kind of the smile-like, okay? And 1 over a very small number is almost infinity. The closer we get to 0, 1 divided by a minuscule number is a very big number. We'll approach infinity as we approach the asymptotes, okay? So this is 1 over sine is cosecant. 1 over cosine is secant, okay? And then finally, remember, we have to graph tangent, which is sine. Let's see, let's go back to, okay, we're going to graph tangent, remember, is sine over cosine. Again, where is cosine 0? It's going to be 0 at pi halves. Notice asymptote. So I want you guys to kind of graph that. So think about that when we start graphing. Let me get back to here, right here. Okay. So right here is your basic sine graph, cosine graph. But think about sine. Right here, sine over cosine is tangent. And where's cosine 0? At the pi half. So I would have an intervals here. And again, cotangent has sine in the denominator, so cosine over sine is cotangent. And wherever sine is 0, I'd have asymptotes there. Okay, I'll do more with that tomorrow in class. Let's see. Okay, this is what we're going to be working on tomorrow in class. This is 10 minutes, so I kind of need to wrap it up. But you'll have sine values, and fill out this table. You'll make your sine graph, and then 1 over that, and you'll plot these points, okay? All right? Then we'll get into doing secant, and here's a blank graph, and you're going to do the same thing here, kind of make a graph, and you can kind of make a same type thing, where you can put cosine and do the same graph with, make it cosine and secant, okay? And we'll eventually get into tangent. Again, when I graph tangent, cosine can't be 0 because cosine is in the denominator. Cosine at pi halves, 3 pi halves, 5 pi halves, negative pi halves, asymptotes will go there, okay? And we'll talk about the period, vertical asymptotes, domain, and range. So be ready to go. The big thing is that I have to stress to everybody is know these graphs, guys. You got to know your sine and cosine graph, and then you can't do any transformations unless you know the original graph, which a lot of you don't. Okay? We'll try to review some of it as we can. All right, that's all I have. Be ready to go tomorrow. Know your unit circle. Know these graphs. All right, you better know your basic sine or cosine graph. Okay, I might give a quiz on that tomorrow. All right, that's all I have. We'll see you tomorrow. I'll be ready to work this assignment tomorrow. Okay, we have 2 days to do it. I'm gonna be out Wednesday and Thursday. All right.